Welcome to Shaping Healthcare, a podcast by Citius Tech. I'm your host, Laurel Rockel. Welcome to today's podcast on Pharma Launch Mastery, turning unmet needs into market success. It's an exciting time to be in pharma. With over $200 billion in pharmaceutical revenue at risk from loss of exclusivity by 2030 and an unprecedented number of new launches each year, competition is fierce and the margin for error is slim. IQVIA data shows that more than 80% of launches set their long-term trajectory in the first 6 months, making early performance more critical than ever. Joining us today is Yuliana, Senior Director at Citius Healthcare Consulting. With over 15 years of experience and a proven track record in launching successful drugs and medical devices, Yuliana combines strategic insight with hands-on execution across multiple therapeutic areas. She's here to share with us what truly drives launch excellence in today's fast-paced and competitive pharmaceutical market. Yuliana, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Laurel. I'm very excited to be here. And like you said, this is a very interesting time in pharma. We wake up to news every day. So this is quite a journey we're having this year, and we'll probably continue with interesting changes going into 2026. So the time to talk about what it takes to launch a drug and do it well is very quite critical today. So I've been giving it a lot of thought coming into this podcast. What can we talk about that would be relevant no matter what? And thank you for the intro. I've been in this industry for a long time, and in the past 10 years, I've launched the drug back pre-digital era, pre-AI in 2015. And then I worked in another global launch in 2017, 18. That's when the social media entered the space of pharmaceutical world and everybody was trying to figure out how to make it work. And then, of course, fast forward the last couple of years, I worked on 2 different drug launches right after COVID. So there was a post-COVID a little bit. And most recently, when AI is everything, I worked in a launch. So as I bring it up because I've seen a lot in the past 10 years how, the drug launch can be impacted by what's going on in the world. And I do believe we can today focus on things that remain unchanged, no matter what's going on. Social media entering the space or AI, there are certain things that just stay the same. And that's what I would like to cover in today's podcast.
Excellent. Well, then let's get started with that. Then, how would you describe then what it takes to really pull off a successful pharma launch?
Well, if everybody had a simple answer, we would not be sitting here. So, the analogy I think of when I think of a drug launch is that it's a puzzle. And it's not one of those baby puzzles with 2, 3 pieces you can easily assemble. It's more like a 1,000 piece 3D model, complex, and you have to figure out to work each piece. And on top of it, you're as leadership looking at all these pieces, stay calm. So, with that said, number one component of successful launch is that leadership that can stay calm no matter what, and assemble a team for the launch. The team for the launch that can be assembled within your own company. So you probably have the talent inside of the company, motivated, smart, with a lot of ambition and drive to get this right. But then, of course, there is a lot of value in bringing outside consultants. And it could be a consulting company, it could be just 1 or 2 consultants with that experience that you might need at the critical points of the launch. So there is no shame in bringing in outside help. And it's bringing fresh perspective and also helping to challenge your internal teams. And I call that leadership component because, in my experience, the best launches usually do both. They assemble launch team with bias for action kind of mentality, ready to go, and then they bring additional resource, whether it's a consultant or a consultancy firm, to really drive that launch to a finish line successfully. So that's one big component of successful launch. Another big component is going back to the basics. What I've said earlier, there are just four basics that every pharma company needs to get right, ideally. And then you have a blockbuster launch.
Excellent. Yes, you mentioned good, calm leadership, getting back to these basics, but also the analogy of a very complex puzzle. So, with all
Yeah.
of those moving parts, can you break down what those fundamentals, what those basics might be for us?
Yeah. The basics are the basics you and I have studied back in high school or college. I always say if you can get a great plan on a piece of napkin, then you have a great plan. If it takes pages, then it's maybe you might want to rethink it. So the four P's we all know: price, product, place, promotion. And in pharma speak, product is, are you clinically differentiated? So let's start there. Price. Have you figured out your market access and reimbursement strategy? Very important in the US, especially now. So that's like a big component. Place, I would translate into patient access. Have you put patient in the center? Have you invested time and resource in thinking through that patient access strategy and what you can do different? And then, of course, fourth P, promotion. That's our traditional brand marketing strategy, HCP, DTC, working on sales force training materials, training your sales force, thinking through that last promotional component, how you're going to promote your drug, through which channels, how, and so on at the tactical level. And then, of course, as I said, it's a big puzzle. So I'm simplifying it into those four buckets. And within each, there's a lot to unpack. We can probably be here the entire day if we go through each. But of course, every executive is tasked to get all of it right. And I say it's not so easy because we're tasked to innovate. We're tasked to address the challenges of the current marketplace. And as I said earlier, today it's AI and new regulatory environment. And then while you're trying to address those new things that are happening, you might forget going back to the basics and let's think through what worked all the time. Let's invest more in patient access instead of, for example, investing into more something unknown technology that we haven't tested. So that's where I think a lot of leadership and teams get caught up with latest and greatest and sometimes don't test and check if they got the basics right.
Mhm. Yes, Juliana, I think the four Ps were quite literally in my marketing 101 class in college, and but that's such a key point to bring up and incredibly important because there's really something to be said about getting the basics right and correct. And so I mean, I know you said that we'd be here all day if we got too deep into it, but can you maybe expand a little more on what it means to get them right and to do them well?
Yeah, sure. So to get them right means that you challenge yourself. And that's where potentially bringing an outside perspective into your launch team might help. I worked on two different drug launches, both first in class. And you'd say, well, it's easy, first in class, it's innovative, it's differentiated. Yes, but no, because let's talk about it's first in class. Yes, it's new, it's wonderful. What about the safety profile? What about competition? We're launching this first in class drug in a rare space within oncology, or are we launching it in a different category where you're entering generic market? Is it IV or is it oral? There's so many questions you can ask And then objectively, how differentiated are you on a scale from 1 to 10? And I find that when you work on a product, you're so attached to it that you always think that the product is highly differentiated because it's this, this, and that. And sometimes you need someone else to come in and just ask you critical thinking questions, like, to help you understand that you're not launching your drug that you want to bring to the market because it will help patients. It's important for patients to have, but you're not launching it in isolation. There are all these different factors that can play a role into making your launch a success or not. And that's just to name a few. And I don't even want to go into pricing strategy because pricing, especially in the United States, is so important. And there are so many players. And getting that reimbursement strategy right is a very, very complex question that's been a challenge for many drug companies, especially when you're smaller pharma, but for bigger pharma as well.
Can you give some examples of some launches that show those principles at work? Like who is doing it well?
I keep bringing up patient access because most recently I came across a study, the market research shop in New York area, and what they found that 60% of success depends on people.
Hmm.
And I thought it was quite interesting finding, which we probably know it's common sense, but now the research shows that it matters more than you think.
There's the numbers to back it up and the research to back that up. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought the study was interesting because it studied drug launches across 340 or something brands from 2008 to 2025. So that's a good time
Wow,
frame
yeah.
to look at. And what they found that there is a perception of what's important, and the perception of what's important dominated by product. So how clinically differentiated is your drug, and the profile of the drug. In reality, with the product mattered less and people mattered more, and that difference was 25%. So the percentage assigned to the product originally was in high 30s, almost 40%, and then the reality that the product itself matters 10 to 20% to HCPs, which is mind-boggling in a way. And that 60% people, as they define people, attributed to the quality of your sales force, the quality of your key account managers and your MSLs, people who go out there to bring knowledge to providers, people who build those relationships. And then the other part of people, it's your patient access programs. Are you creating certain adherence tools that can help providers and patients? And a lot of times I see that these technical things tend to be overlooked, or um, the investment isn't there because there's so much investment into getting the best in class drug to the market and providing education to HCPs. Adherence tools becomes less of a strategy for certain brands. And I think, again, having a different perspective maybe early on when you're working in the launch might be helpful. There's value in bringing somebody and question what you're doing.
Mhm. Thank you for expanding on that research. That's really incredible. And that it comes down to people. What a key piece there is the people. And I've actually noticed that theme throughout our discussion today too, the leadership, having the right people in place, bringing the right people in. Yuliana, as we wrap up our wonderful conversation together, what would be one piece of advice that you might have for commercial teams prepping for 2026 and beyond?
What we talked about just now, I think the most important is invest in your people. And that's how you nail the launch. And what we also talked about, remember the fundamentals. So as leadership, um, if you're not doing something with AI, you're already behind. So please do that. Invest in latest and greatest, innovate. But remember that your most treasured um, thing within the company is your team, your leadership team. So invest in your people. And when you do the launch, also think through of the patient access and your people who'll be facing providers and invest there. That's the most important. And if you get it right, then you'll have a great launch in your hands.
Wonderful. Yuliana, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with me and to bringing your expertise and your knowledge to this discussion today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
The Shaping Healthcare podcast is brought to you by Citius Tech, a leader in healthcare consulting and IT services. To find out more about Citius Tech, visit citiustech.com. To listen to more interesting insights on healthcare technology and innovations, search and subscribe to the Shaping Healthcare podcast. Thank you for listening. If you want to share any feedback or would like to be featured in our podcast, do write to us at citiusvision@citiustech.com.